Chris Gunzz of the Chris Gunzz Boxing Show on HustleBoss.com, here with the great Abel Sanchez. Abel, fresh off your man Triple G's first pay-per-view outing, and it brought what looked like the most complete Triple G I ever saw, and I'm sure you couldn't be doing any better right now. Am I right?
Well, I'm doing great. I think Triple G showed a lot of the things that I see in the gym. We had the kind of fighter in front of us that presented an opportunity to practice some of those things for the future.
Yeah, and 20,548 people in attendance recorded, sold out big room of Madison Square Garden, and it was extremely pro Gennady Golovkin. You could tell by their ring walks. I'm sure Triple G kind of grew used to it by now because he already had many big crowds at the Garden before. He went out west and received a huge gate and lots of obvious fans at the StubHub Center when he fought Marco Antonio Rubio. And then he went to the Forum out in L.A. to fight Monroe. But was there ever a point, what I want to know, was there ever a point where he did get surprised by the support he received from all cultures in the U.S., or did it even surprise you at all?
You know, he's slowly garnered some support along the way from the first fight against Praxa on September 1st, 2012 to this last fight. I think it's grown actually pretty rapidly, but it has grown because I think the people are looking for something for their money, looking for something that entertains them for the dollar that they're spending, and I think Gennady represents that. I think Gennady's style is the kind of style that they know what they're going to get. They know that they're going to get the kind of fight that they want to see. The kind of fights they used to see back in the 80s. So because of that, I think that little by little we're getting more of a fan base. But to be able to sell out and the Garden and have those people just screaming for him was quite interesting for me. I'd never been in front of that many fans that were pro my fighter, and it was fun. It was fun to hear all the noise that was being made.
Yeah, it's great. And I know you're on social media. I follow you. You're on Facebook. I'm not sure if you're on Twitter. I follow you on Facebook. But in the last 15 to 20 years, and not counting the Latino, the Mexicans or the Puerto Ricans, because we have a lot of them in America that can make a big star out of Latino fighters. But I think Manny Pacquiao was the first one that really, because of social media, I think, was able to become a huge star all across the all cultures. It didn't matter who you were a Manny Pacquiao fan. It didn't matter if he was from the Philippines or America. Do you feel like Triple G would have crossed over maybe 20 years ago if he came around? Or do you think it's all because of social media making the world smaller?
No, it's part of social media, but I think 20 years ago the TV market was a lot different than it is today. The TV market before and the kind of fighters that were on TV before were a lot more entertaining. There wasn't as much clinching. There wasn't as much wrestling. There were actual fights. Up until Oscar, I think, and Tito, fights started to become more of a wrestling match, more of a UFC thing. And I think the fans started reacting to that. There are some few that talk about it being the sweet science, but really it isn't the sweet science. What it is, when we go to the fights, is we want to see somebody get knocked out. We live in a morbid society, and that's the reason we go to the fights. We don't go to the fights to watch somebody box and run for 12 rounds. And the majority of the fans want to see entertainment, and I think that's what Gennady brings back. Brings back that Mike Tyson X kind of individual that you better leave work home. You better leave work early because you don't get home, you may miss the first round, or it may be over in the first round. Hopefully that continues, and the Latin fans that are behind us and that are backing us right now continues to grow the Latin fan base. But I do believe it's because that's what they're accustomed to. That's what they're accustomed to watching their fighters do.
Yeah, and it's funny that you bring up Mike Tyson, but Gennady got a higher KO percentage higher KO ratio than Tyson did at his absolute best before he lost to Buster Douglas. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that Gennady may not be the demonic and beast-like individual in the ring like Mike was. Mike came out to hurt you from the first second. I think Gennady's more calculated and more. I think the boxing ability is a little more than Mike had, but they both have the same intention, and that's to separate you from your senses and make sure that we get a knockout. I think that keeps it out of the judges' hands in some of the towns that we've been in and other people have been in. Sometimes the judging is not up to par. They see a different fight, so if you keep it out of the judges' hands, as Mike did and as Gennady's doing, I think it makes for a more interesting night of boxing.
Yeah, you said Triple G was more calculating than Tyson was, but his calculations look dead evil to me from the first round on. He looked mean on Saturday night.
That's a technical. I read a quote the other day, something about he's very technical. He's a technical violence that he shows us in the ring, and that's a very good description because he is very calculating. He is taking chances. He is trying to make something happen and not waiting for something to happen. And I think that me as a fight fan appreciate those kind of fighters because I know that when I pay my $49 or $69 or $90, whatever it is, I know what I'm going to get. I'm going to get entertainment. And I don't mind spending that money if I'm going to get entertainment. So if that's the case, then Golovkin's fan base is going to continue to grow, fortunately.
Absolutely. And take me back to the build-up in the training camp for David Lemieux. David gives an image to people that seems as if he's very confident, bordering even on cocky. Did that fuel Triple G with any extra incentive to dominate the man the way he did?
No, I don't think so. I think that the fact that David was the IBF reigning champion was the fuel enough for Gennady because he wants to get all the belts. He wants to be the undisputed middleweight champion, and by fighting David, he gained the IBF. So that was enough motivation for him to be on his P's and Q's and making sure that he did everything the best of his ability that night to beat a David Lemieux, who's a big puncher also. I mean, this is a guy that had almost the same knockout ratio as Gennady. So he was in his own right a big puncher.
Yeah, and Gennady smiles a lot, at least when the cameras are around. Does he do that even when the cameras aren't there, too, or does he just is he more serious?
He's the same jovial guy that I first met 5.5 years ago. He's the same jovial guy, always joking, always smiling, always in a... He said, Coach, one day somebody asked him a question about his career and about his life. He said, you know what, I have a wonderful life. Why shouldn't I be happy? And that's exactly how he feels inside the ring. We do all the preparation in the gym, and when he gets to the fight, you're supposed to be having fun. You're supposed to be exercising all the things that you practice in the gym to be able to dominate in the fight. And fortunately for him, God gave him some heavy hands, and with discipline and dedication and technique and timing, he's been able to accumulate all those knockouts. But it wasn't because he got lucky; it's because he prepared things and he got ready for that situation that was going to be presented to him. And so far, so good. So hopefully, it keeps going.
Yeah, so far so good is right. So nothing irritated him about David Lemieux as a person personally before the fight?
No, fortunately David was a ultimate pro, a consummate pro. His team was very professional. Mark Ramsey is a great coach. It's just that on that night, Gennady Golovkin was a little more boxing savvy than David. David's got a great career ahead of him. Right now, Gennady Golovkin is the best middleweight in the world, and David went up against the best middleweight, so he's going to send the shade up. That night, Saturday night, Gennady was better. But I'm sure David will learn from this and will become a better fighter. And with Mark's help and Camille as his manager guiding him for the next 3 or 4 fights, he will become champion again. And hopefully down the road, if he does become champion and he improves his technical aspect of his game, and then maybe we'll meet again.
Now to the fight itself. From the first round on, Triple G used an amazing jab, an extremely painful-looking jab, and his defense seemed to baffle David Lemieux. Lemieux seemed clueless when it came to getting inside and having any success at all. And it was mentioned on the pre-show on HBO when David Lemieux said that Triple G's last opponent, Willie Monroe, had some success landing shots on Triple G. And he said that if he landed those kinds of punches, Triple G is getting knocked out. And you said something like that too. Something like that. And was the respect for David Lemieux, I guess, and his power real, or did what happened go totally according to the way that you and Triple G envisioned the fight going before it happened?
No, prior to the fight, I was asked if I thought that David Lemieux was the most difficult opponent. And I said yes, he was the most difficult opponent because he was an IBF champion. And he's the first guy that actually had something to lose other than an L on his record. He had a belt that he worked very hard to get. So he was the most difficult opponent because of that. But he wasn't the hardest puncher. He wasn't the best boxer. I thought Curtis Stevens was the heavier puncher. I thought Curtis Stevens was the most difficult because of his punching power. Mm-hmm. But our plan originally, from the beginning, was to make sure that we limited David's access to or ability to be able to land punches. And how we were going to do that was to go back to Gennady's 350 amateur fights in the great amateur program in Kazakhstan that gave me a great foundation to work off of. So by throwing the jab like I've seen him throw it in the gym, it was an easy fight. We knew that it could be an easy fight. It could have been a boring fight if he did use the rest of his tools like he did, but the jab was such an excellent weapon that he could have jabbed all night long and won the fight easily. But David was aggressive, and David came to fight. David didn't lay down. He got hit with some good shots, and I think at the point where the fight got stopped, the referee felt like David had no chance of winning first. Second, he didn't have no chance of hurting GG, and he was taking some punishment from a very heavy-handed guy. So sometimes we have to look at what's in the best interest of David's future and his career. On that same night that we fought, there was a young man named Pritchard Colon that fought in Virginia, I believe, or somewhere in the States, that got hurt in the ninth round and is in terrible condition right now because he got hit with a good shot, or maybe he got hit a little too much with the good shots. So by stopping the fight, like Steve Willis did in the eighth round, maybe it saved David from further punishment. I'm not saying he could have got hurt like Pritchard did, but he would have absorbed the punishment that he was absorbing for 8 rounds unnecessarily.
Yeah, and I hope a lot of people are sending their best vibes or prayers, whatever you believe in. I hope that a lot of people know about Pritchard Colon's situation, and it is dire, and I hope people's best wishes keep going towards him for a full recovery, hopefully. Nothing's impossible, I guess, so people keep wishing well for Pritchard Colon, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was thinking about that fight too. During that fight, there was many times that I was thinking they should stop the fight, and Lemieux had enough, but they did keep sending him out there, and it was kind of getting to be a scary situation to me, at least, when it got late in the fight. But
yeah, unfortunately for David, he had what they call the puncher's chance, to land that big bomb. But up until the 8th round, he really hadn't wobbled or hadn't hurt Golovkin. So you have to kind of assess the situation as Steve Willis did, the referee, and thought it was in the best interest of David for his future and for his for that particular fight to stop it. But I hope, as you said, that when people hit their knees tonight, to whomever they feel is their power, to say a little prayer, to help Pritchard along and to help his family cope with a hard situation that they find themselves in right now. But this is a difficult game, and Gennady has said it many times in the past that this is a serious business, and you have to be a serious person to be involved in it. And dire things and bad things happen, but we have to deal with them. But it's best to err on the side of caution than to be talking about it later. I should have done this and I should have done that.
Yeah, and you mentioned Triple G's jab. The jab's considered the most important punch in boxing. I mentioned his jab in the first round, how incredible and effortless it looked. It looked like Sonny Liston at his best. It was just so heavy and like a ramrod. Do you see him doing that a lot in the gym? And is that going to be the Triple G that we always see from now on? Is he going to try to add more defensive skills? And the jab is a defensive punch, actually. But is he gonna try to do this for every fight, or is it just a?
No. For this fight, the opponent presented the opportunity to practice the jab. Mm-hmm. Other fighters will present different situations and challenges, but this young man had 350 amateur fights and lost 5. The great, like I said, Kazakhstani amateur program gave me a great foundation to work off of. But if you go back even 3 or 4 years, Kazakhstan has done very well in tournaments, done very well in the WSB, done very well in all the amateur programs that throughout the world or tournaments that they fight in. So they have a good system. Gennady has all these tools that I've seen in the gym as he displayed that night with the jab. Hopefully we get other fighters that allow us to fight on the inside, that allow us to practice some of those things that are necessary to compete at an elite level. This time it was a jab. Maybe next time it'll be the inside game. But he's got a lot of tools that he has not used because he hasn't had the opportunity. But I hope that in the near future we get an opportunity to practice some of the other stuff that I see consistently in the gym and that the sparring partners have to deal with in the gym on a daily basis.
That's absolutely scary, Abel. You're scaring me.
You know, a long time ago I said that I had never seen Gennady hit somebody 100%. To this day, I haven't seen Gennady hit somebody 100% like he's hit somebody in the gym. Because in the gym, I provide chest protectors, I provide rib protectors. I don't allow Gennady to hit him to the head so much. So I've seen Gennady hit heavyweights to the arms and make him quit. So that means it's a hard punch. So one of these days, I hope that that opportunity presents itself where Gennady can actually hit somebody 100% and see what happens. David said that he didn't feel Gennady's power. Gennady really didn't go out to try to hurt anybody. He went out to box. He wanted to show, because we had the opportunity with that kind of opponent to be able to box, to be able to use the jab and combinations. If you notice, all his body shots were from the outside. Yeah. They were long-armed body shots. They were long-armed hooks to the body. They weren't the short hook that he hit Macklin with. But because that was our intent from the beginning, to show a little more diversity and a little more boxing skills than we've shown in the past. And David, like I said, presented that opportunity.
Yeah, I don't know what David could have expected. I mean, did he expect to win it all if he expected an even stronger punching Triple G? Because he looked like he felt some power at the end of the night.
Yes, he felt the sting, I think, but I don't think he felt the real power. But he made David look like he didn't belong in there with him. If Gennady would have fought on the inside and stayed on the inside, maybe David would have had a little more success. But we take each fight and we take each opponent and we take each situation on its own. It merits a special plan for each fighter, and it merits a special plan for each opponent. And fortunately for me as a coach, Golovkin's got all this background and foundation that in boxing IQ that I can say to him, this is what we want to do in this fight, and he does it to a T. I mean, he did the exact game plan that we planned in the gym. And when he would come back to the corner, and I was told by some people that saw the fight, when the camera was on me, I was smiling. I was like not saying nothing, and there was nothing to say because he was doing everything as we planned. He was doing everything to the exact blueprint that we laid out. So if I wasn't saying anything, it's because there was nothing to say. And if I was smiling, it's because here you have a student that's doing exactly what you ask him to do, and he's having success at it. So it was fun for me to watch. It was fun for me to be a part of, and it was fun for Gennady to be able to demonstrate to the fans that he could do a lot more than just punch.
Yeah, and I expected Triple G to win the fight. I did. I pretty much had no doubt. I thought that Lemieux had a puncher's chance, but I mean, anything could happen in the game. But it was tough to see a guy winning if he doesn't have as many layers as the other guy got. Triple G has that amateur experience, like you said, and incredible knockout power along with more skills, and you got to bet on that guy. But back to the fight, you had round 2 after winning round 1. That unbelievable Triple G jab kept Lemieux's hair flying around, and as the crowd was chanting his name, Triple G heard him with a hook to the body. I remember, and I believe that all my pre-fight butterflies and the butterflies that were in my stomach in the first round disappeared, because the ending seemed like you already knew what was going to happen. You already knew who the winner was going to be. David Lemieux only likes to come forward, and Triple G's strength put the normal stalker on the run. Was there any doubt in your mind at that point in round 2, or was it still kind of you feeling like you have to be cautious and careful? Because to me, it looked like Triple G already had it in the bag, looking at David Lemieux's expressions.
No, when he came back to the corner, if you listen to the tape, if they have it, I haven't seen the fight yet, but if you listen and it shows our corner, what I said to Gennady was a good round, and he looked at me and says, "Coach, yes, I see." Exactly what we talked about in the gym, and what I tried to explain to him, I think in the second or third round, maybe between the second or third round, or third and fourth round, I said, "Don't carry this, man. Let's practice the things that we practice in the gym, because these are the things that are going to make you a better fighter in the future." And he was able to go out and do that. When he hurt him with the body shot, if you look at the body shot, it was a long body shot. It wasn't a close, like he had in the past, like he hit Macklin with. It was a long body shot because we wanted to keep distance. We wanted to make sure that we box from the outside. The discipline to stay on the outside and not. See, it would have been easy for him to get on the inside and fight like he normally does. But we wanted to stay disciplined. We wanted to stay on the outside. We wanted to make sure we landed the shots from a distance, so that they were more of a boxing clinic. And he did that. He stayed disciplined, and he did that the whole fight. He never once went on the inside to try to fight with David, because that wasn't the plan. Not because I was leery or because I didn't want him to be hurt. There was nothing David could do. David's not the biggest puncher, like I said, like Curtis Stevens. So there was nothing that David was going to do that would have scared me as a coach. But I wanted him to practice on the outside. I wanted him to make sure that we did what we said in the gym, no matter how the fight went, no matter how easy the fight was or how he was landing his shots. I wanted him to make sure that he stayed disciplined.
Yeah, and David tried to turn the tide in the third round. And hats off to David, because he didn't quit. He didn't stop trying. And he tried to turn it around in the third round despite that really hard second. But it was clear that Triple G wanted to make a point that he wasn't going to let the tide turn. After David Lemieux came out and landed a couple of good right hands, Triple G answered back with some really nice combinations, and combinations that are hardly seen by other fighters, if ever, especially today. Really imaginative combinations, like the painful looking left to the body and immediate left to the heads that seems to zap some more of the life out of David Lemieux. And it just looked like his self-belief and just dipped even lower after he tried to mount his comeback, and Triple G just had more of everything. How surprised were you that Lemieux survived up to that point, to the end of the third round?
You know, to me it was obvious that it was very discouraging for David, but my respect and Gennady's respect goes to David, not only to David, but to his corner, who kept him motivated. He kept him doing the things or trying things to try to thwart the things that Gennady was doing. But it was frustrating for David, but it was another day in the office for Gennady, because that's exactly, like I said, what we practiced in the gym. And if you continue to stay disciplined and you do those things, it's going to be very frustrating for the opponent and frustrating for the corner, because they can't find a solution. David kept looking for a solution, landed some shots because this is boxing, but could not find the answer for some of the things that Gennady was doing, and some of the different combinations that he was throwing that we practice in the gym all the time. I don't believe in being repetitive. I believe in being creative in the ring and trying different things. If they don't work, what the hell? You try them the next time, and if they work, great. But at least you're giving the fans a treat. You're giving the fans a different look from what they're accustomed to, and hopefully gaining some more fans, and hopefully making sure that they come back the next time.
Yeah, and I have no doubt that they will, and even more after word of mouth spreads. But through round 3, it was basically all Triple G's left hands that inflicted most of the damage. It was the jabs and the hooks. But the 4th round saw a change as Triple G introduced his right hand to David Lemieux, and he hurt him bad and rocked him, totally causing him to get on his bicycle. And this is a guy that only likes to come forward. So when you see that, you know that something is going on there. He doesn't want any more of it. And if it wasn't clear to anybody after the 3rd round, it definitely was by that 4th round. It was total domination. Were either of you surprised that Lemieux withstood these punches so far, having had the night when he quit against Rubio in his background?
No. Prior to the fight, in some interviews, I said that as soon as David feels the strength and the power, that he would be a different fighter. And that's exactly what happened. Once he felt those punches, and he was backtracking, he was not on his front foot, he was not coming forward. And unfortunately for David, his best position is on his front foot and coming forward and throwing punches. So when you start to back a guy up like that, then he becomes an easy prey. He becomes an easy target. And Golovkin saw that. Unlike the fight with Curtis Stevens, where he was trying to hurt Curtis Stevens and trying to make him go as long as possible so that he could inflict punishment. With David, it was more trying to find the perfect spot to land the things that he wanted to land. But David hung in there. David, even retreating, he was trying to be aggressive, even in retreat. But Golovkin was just a little too strong, I believe.
Yeah, and then round 5, the totally pro Triple G crowd actually started cheering David Lemieux as David came out, and he seemed willing to trade with your man. His heart was, if not necessarily winning the crowd over, his heart was causing the crowd to want to show him a little support for what he was showing. But even though he was showing the willingness to trade bombs with Triple G, it was always for every second clear that Triple G was just better at everything. It was clear that if you had to pick which fighter you'd rather be, you're always going to want to be Triple G for every second of the fight. And a left hand, it was a left, right, left to the body that put Lemieux down, and it didn't look like he wanted to get up, but he did, and he was very fortunate that there was only a couple seconds left to go in the round as Triple G closed in, the bell rang. If you were in David Lemieux's corner at that point, and he has a very good trainer, you already mentioned Mark Ramsey, he's a great trainer, but if that was your fighter, would you have considered stopping it at that point?
Well, first of all, we anticipated David having a lot of want, having a big heart, having a lot of want, and having a lot of motivation because he was the reigning IBF middleweight champion. We anticipated David not quitting. And the fact that the crowd got on David's side is because they saw that this could be even a more interesting fight than it had become. I think of fight fans, whether they're Mexican or Kazakhstani or Canadian, well, they want to see a good fight. They want to see a competitive fight, and they want to see a guy that continues to try. If I had been in David's corner when he came back to the corner, I would have assessed the situation, as Mark did, I'm sure, and figured out whether it was in our best interest or not in our best interest. I'm sure that when David came back to the corner, he didn't show no weakness and he didn't show no wanting to stop the fight. So Mark had to assess that and make sure that David wanted to continue. And obviously he did, because he came out strong in the 6th round and he came out doing some of the things that he wanted to do, not being very effective, but at least he was trying. So I give Mark a lot of credit for not stopping it at that point and not panicking, because he had a good horse in the race that was being outclassed but was still in the race.
Yeah, and you mentioned round 6, and he did come out looking to fight in that round too, and it seemed like he hurt Triple G to the body with a hook for a second. And I know Triple G is one of the best conditioned athletes in the world, and he's able to bounce back from punches like that. But did Gennady, and Gennady did win that round, by the way. He still fought back and hurt Lemieux more than Lemieux hurt him with that shot. But did GGG, did he mention that punch and how it felt at any point to you after?
You know, I didn't take the punch, so I can't tell you whether it hurt him or not. I didn't notice any change in his demeanor after that shot. It was a very good shot, but again, this is boxing. You're going to get caught with good shots. He never mentioned it. I didn't notice anything different in the corner. I didn't notice anything different after the shot was landed. What I did notice is once David landed that shot, Golovkin came right back at him and hit him with 3 or 4 shots. So I would venture to say, I guess, that David landed a good shot, but no emotion was shown to be able to tell me that hurt him in a way. But you're in boxing. Like I said, you're going to get hit with good shots, and that's part of the game. David's a very good fighter. He had to land some good shots in order for this to be a competitive fight.
Yeah, and round 7 saw referee Steve Willis bring Lemieux to the ringside doctor, only to be sent back into the wood chipper that was Triple G that night. And the wood chipper did what wood chippers do. The absolute tireless middleweight champion kept the punishment coming, and after a right hand landed in the 8th round, Steve Willis decided that he saw enough and put a stop to the carnage. How happy were you when it seemed like it might continue all 12 rounds? Do you want the knockout all the time, or did Triple G kind of maybe want to have the fight go on, or was it just
after the 5th round, I knew that it wasn't going to go 12. Yeah. After the 5th round, and when the referee brought the doctor on the apron and to look at David, I don't think he brought him up to look at David as much as what let's just say if he was in a condition to continue. He brought him up to just see the demeanor, just see what David's reaction would have been, just to see how he reacted to the questions and how he reacted to being asked the questions. Sometimes you have to judge not so much by being hurt, but by how you respond to what they're asking you. Steve Willis wanted to make sure that David still wanted to fight. David still wanted to go on, and by bringing him to the doctor asked him particular questions, and how he answers them is how they're going to determine whether the fight should continue or not continue. At the point where he got hit with that good body shot and he winced and he's sitting in the corner like wide open prey, he got hit with a couple shots. At that point, Steve Willis felt that 1, he wasn't hurting Golovkin. 2, he was losing every round. 3, there was no chance he was going to land that Hail Mary. And 4, he's getting pummeled in the corner. Enough is enough. In retrospect, we didn't know about Pritchard at the time, but in retrospect, sometimes a smart referee would rather err on the side of caution than to be talking about this a couple days later about the difficulty that young man's having in the hospital. So all those things have to be taken into consideration by the referee, and in my opinion, he did the right thing. Of course, when you're a warrior, as David is, you got to complain, and when you're the coach of a warrior, you're going to complain too. But we have to look at all the circumstances, and we have to make sure that we are protecting the health of the fighter for their future and their family's future, and watching his kids grow up. So I'm happy that Steve made that call, and David lives to fight another day, and David lives to be able to have a great career.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the show, the Road to Triple G, Lemieux, HBO showed his beautiful daughter, and I'm glad he's there for her too. And he's also got a son who lives in Germany, who I believe is Germany, and they need their father. And I'm glad the referee, and Steve Willis is a great referee. He's one of the most fun guys to watch ref a fight. So great stoppage. Maybe a little later than I would have done it, but maybe the crowd would have had a problem if he stopped it earlier. And after every fight, Triple G gets more and more popular. More people learn about him and are instant fans because of what he brings to the table and And the instant question after a fight is, who's next? Lots of people want the winner of next month's big Canelo Cotto fight. Do you prefer either guy for your man, or maybe you don't care who it is?
Well, first of all, I think that every time somebody thinks about complaining about the stoppage of the fight, they need to go back to that road to Golovkin and look at David cooking breakfast for his daughter.
Yeah.
Look at David being a father, a single father.
Yep.
Mind you, a single father that's raising his daughter. Look at David being the father that a lot of fathers wish they could be, or a lot of fathers are neglecting to be.
Okay.
Then you go back and think that I'm glad that David's back doing that same thing. Tomorrow's another day. Let's just take today for today and tomorrow for tomorrow. But at least he's there today and the next day for his daughter and for his son that he has also. I'm happy for him for that. But as far as Golovkin, now that that fight is over, the WBC was allowed by the Golovkin team to have Canelo and Cotto fight for the WBC title that Cotto holds right now, but with the understanding that the winner must face the winner of Golovkin-Lemieux. Golovkin wins, so now the winner of Canelo Cotto has to fight the winner, which is Golovkin. Within 15 days after their fight, they are to decide whether they want to fight Golovkin or not. If they decide not to, then Golovkin is declared the WBC champion automatically. If they decide to, whether it be Cotto or Canelo, it doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is that we get a fight for Golovkin. I would like to see him. If that doesn't happen, I would love to see him fight in February sometime. I don't know where, but somewhere. If it's Cotto, if it's Canelo that wins, I believe that Canelo will fight us sometime in May, because that's the May holiday that is so popular with Mexican fans. So if that is the case, we look forward to that challenge. If Cotto wins, I would venture to say that Cotto may not fight Golovkin, because Golovkin's as he puts it, he's a junior middleweight and Golovkin's a middleweight. But if he does, then I look forward to a fight maybe in June with Cotto, because that is the Puerto Rican parade vacation time for the Puerto Ricans in New York. So we have many, or several, I should say, interesting fights or interesting scenarios that could provide a lot of entertainment for the fans. We're just ready for whomever. It doesn't matter to us. We'll prepare for whatever fight is ahead of us.
What other fights do you think could match that kind of excitement, though?
You know, Andy Lee is fighting Billy Joe Saunders in December also, so Andy Lee has expressed interest in fighting Golovkin. Mm-hmm. But then you also have Danny Jacobs fighting Peter Quillen. If Peter Quillen happens to win, then I think a Peter Quillen fight at the Barclays would be a huge fight.
You know,
there's
I'm sorry.
Several scenarios.
Yeah, but the thing is, though, when I watch a PBC card, and I'm kind of caught in between whether I like PBC or not. They do give some good fights, and sometimes they give a lot of bad fights, but they do give a lot. They give quantity, if not always quality. So I'm kind of caught in between. But one of the things is, when I'm watching a PBC card, and it seems like Al Heyman might have something to do with it, I'm not sure, but the announcers, if a Quillen is fighting or a Jacobs is fighting, they never mention the name of Triple G. And it's not just Triple G, they do it with other fighters who aren't signed by Al Heyman too, who you kind of can't ignore, but they seem to ignore them. On Showtime, on all the shows that PBC's on, they never mention Triple G's name.
Well, that's unfortunate that is their agenda. But I believe that Peter, being the kind of fighter that he is, and having the challenge of a Triple G, would rise to the occasion. Unfortunately for Peter, he's been dealt some very bad fights because of matchmaking. I don't think that's completely Peter's fault. I believe that the people in charge of doing the matches and proposing the opponents have lacked in imagination to try to make Peter a bigger star. But I think the challenge of a Golovkin would make Peter not only train harder, but really motivated mentally for that challenge, and I think it would be a great fight, especially at the Barclays in New York, him being from the Brooklyn area. So I would hope that promoters come to terms and promoters sit down at the table and try to hash something out that is beneficial, not only for their side, but for our side, but for boxing, for us as fight fans, so that we can determine who, if it's Peter, if it's Golovkin, if it's Lee, if it's Cotto, if it's Canelo, we can determine who the best middleweight is out in the world. And the only way we're going to find out is for them to fight each other in determine that. And it'll be going back to the days of Hagler, Leonard, Hearns, Duran, Benitez, where they fought each other in a round robin thing, and it was they became not only Hall of Famers, superstars, but they also gave us great entertainment.
Yeah, I don't know if you noticed that either, but did you notice that they don't mention his name?
Yeah, I do. Unfortunately, they are trying to monopolize their part of it, or their group is trying to just be their group and not mention the world caliber fighters. But we can't change that. All we can do is just continue to win and continue to perform and continue to give the fans what they want to see. If PBC doesn't start doing that or continues to do that on a more consistent basis, then maybe they'll lose the audience. And maybe when they lose the audience, we will gain their part of their percentage of fans on our end. But still, the fights that can be made should be made, and there's fighters out there that are good enough to compete on a world-class level as Golovkin is competing right now. It's just that they're not getting the opportunity.
Yeah, and the names that keep being mentioned, probably because people know that Al Haymon doesn't really want to put his guy in against Golovkin. Most people, and probably because more people know them too, and there's more Mexican and more Puerto Rican fans, is Canelo Cotto the winner of that fighting Triple G. They know it'll be easier to make, and it's more of a fight that they want to see. And I know that Triple G sparred with Canelo before, and I remember one time you saying that Triple G got the better of it, but since Canelo's fight with Mayweather, I noticed a huge improvement in Canelo. Do you, and do you think he might bring more to the table than he did back then?
Oh, absolutely. He was 21 years old back then. Yeah. He was a baby. And if Golovkin got the best of him, is in the gym. I think a fight with 8-ounce gloves, with 10-ounce gloves, I should say, is totally different. The gym is one thing, and the fights are a totally different thing. They're trying to help each other in the gym. They're not trying to hurt each other. But I think that a fight now, Canelo's grown immensely. They've done a great job with him. Oscar's matchmaking and promotional company has done a great job, and Chepo and Jose have done it. Chepo and Eddie have done a great job. So I anticipate if they ever do fight to be completely different than what they sparred when they sparred, because it's a national fight. There's going to be more at stake. But in mentioning PBC, I believe that Danny Jacobs happens to be the interim or the regular champion for the WBA, which is the mandatory for Golovkin. So at one point or another, if Al is going to continue to have his fighters fight for the belts that are recognized right now, the IBF, WBA, WBC, WBO, and IBO, if he's going to have them continue to fight for those belts, there's going to come a point where Danny Jacobs is going to want to fight his mandatory, which is Golovkin. And at that point, whether it be Danny Jacobs or Peter Quillen, whomever wins, and at that point, Al's going to have to deal with the promoters that handle the fighter that is the champion for that organization. So, working with Tom Loeffler is the kind of promoter that works with everybody. He has no agenda. He has no political preferences, let's just say. So he's going to do what's best for Golovkin, and if he does what's best for Golovkin, then maybe that fight will happen. If it does happen, then I think we will determine then who the best middleweight in the world is.
Yeah, if everyone worked and operated the way Tom Loeffler did, it would be a great sport behind the scenes. But it's going to be really interesting because we're going to see if the deep pockets of Al Heyman cause things to happen politically in those alphabet organizations. It's going to be interesting for over the past next year to 2 years to see how it plays out. But we talked about... I'm sorry. Go on.
Yeah, but even with deep pockets, I think that there comes a point where if you're the regular champion, if you want to be considered the super champion or the real champion of the WBA, let's just say, then deep pockets don't matter. Deep pockets will only matter if Al Heyman's able to propose or to offer the kind of purse or the kind of monetary compensation that the Golovkin team would require. Then when deep pockets apply, but I'm sure that Danny Jacobs would love to be the only WBA champion there is. So in order to do that, Heyman would have to accommodate if that's what they're going to do, or give up the belts, or have the Heyman fighters not fight for the WBA, WC, WBO, and IBF belts and create their own. But by doing that, they're going away from the realm. They're going away from what boxing is. It's like a baseball franchise wanting to start their own. Instead of the National American League, they want to start the all New York League. They just say it doesn't fit into what boxing is right now. But Danny being the champion right now and Peter fighting him, I guess they're fighting on December the 5th. I think they're fighting for that belt. Mm-hmm. So once the winner is determined, what is their next step? Their next step is just to stay on the sidelines, just fight for the PBC, or be world recognized as a world champion. Like I said, at that point, then Al would have to deal with the promoters that are willing to deal with Al, which would be Tom is more than happy to deal with Tom with Al Heyman to try to determine and try to see if there's a possibility that Golovkin could fight Peter or Danny to determine whether they belong as the regular champion or not. If that's the case, then I think we as fans are going to benefit from it, because then we're getting to the point where we're going to have one champion in each division, or at least in the middleweight division, as Marvin was and as Bernard was at one point. I would hopefully, before I stop training fighters, I would love to see that. I would love to see that, because that's the way it used to be.
Yeah, me too. And that's another reason. It's going to be interesting on so many levels, because it's going to show you. I know if a fighter wanted to fight Triple G, they could go to Al Heyman and be like, look, I want him next. And what could Al Heyman say? He can't say no if you keep demanding it. So it's going to be interesting to see what's in the mind of these fighters and what they really want. So it's going to be interesting on, like I said, a lot.
Chris, I think that it goes deeper than that. I don't think it's so much the fighter. I think that the fighters want to fight the best. I think that Al is trying to control boxing to a point where he dictates on who fights whom. Yeah. And by doing that, the fighters don't really have a choice who they fight. And in this case, Peter fighting the fight that he's fighting, once he wins the title, if he beats Danny Jacobs, who will he fight? He would have to fight a Heyman fighter and not fight the next one in line. So what happens if he doesn't fight the mandatory and he gets stripped? Then, as when it happened when he was going to fight Komarov, and he decided that was the biggest purse in his career. He's never fought a main event. That was the biggest purse, but he gave up $1.4 million because it wasn't in the best interest in the PBC. It shouldn't be the best interest of the PBC. It should be the best interest of the particular fighter that has struggled and has worked his whole life to get to that point. But I don't think it's the fighters that don't want to fight. I think it's Al that's trying to dictate what it is that needs to happen for the PBC to flourish the way that he in his mind he sees it flourishing.
Yeah, and another thing is a lot of these fighters, I think what's making fighters nowadays scared to put their their titles on the line or their undefeated records on the line against another good fighter is because of the fickle boxing fans. Because in the MMA, I don't like the MMA personally, but in the MMA, when a fighter loses, their fans still accept the loser in their next fight and think legitimately that he still has a chance or she still has a chance to win that fight, even though they lost their last fight. But in boxing, you see a lot of the younger fans think that a loss means that you suck totally, and they act like you're the biggest loser in the world. You don't see that in MMA, but does a lot of it also, a fighter doesn't want to lose and doesn't want to lose their undefeated record if they're undefeated, is because of the way the fans will not accept them anymore.
Well, it's not only the fans. I think that the networks, unfortunately, only want to showcase guys that are undefeated. And I've always believed that when I was with Terry Norris, that sometimes a loss makes you a better fighter, because a loss makes you understand what it is that you need to do to never have that feeling again. And by the networks demanding or only putting guys on that have undefeated records, it makes the fighters not only scared, but makes the management scared of having a loss. So they develop a fighter that hasn't had any difficult fights, hasn't had any obstacles, hasn't had any kind of fighters that make him learn, because they don't want to take a chance of losing. So we're not getting the best product. We're getting a product that's flawed, a product that is not completely developed, because they're afraid to test it, or they're afraid to make sure that they don't have that they have a zero on their record and not have a loss. But that is something that is important to note, that Orlando Salido, with 11, 12 losses, puts on some of the best fights, because he's a seasoned veteran. He's a seasoned fighter that knows how to fight and knows how to entertain.
Yeah, but at the same time, Salido,
guys like Broner, when Broner fought Maidana, really was an untested guy. That Maidana was an old veteran that just knew how to fight, and Broner didn't. So situations like that are more prevalent today than they were in the past, because guys really don't know how to fight, don't know their craft.
No, and you mentioned Salido, and Salido's incredible. He's great. He's been around forever, and he's just as dangerous now as he's ever been. But his fans are usually going to be Mexican, and Mexican people, they mature faster, and they mature from an early age because of the way they live and the way they're forced to live. They're older than Americans. Even when Americans turn 30 or 40, 20-year-old Mexicans act more mature than them, and they know boxing way more than America does. So Salido's always going to have a fan base because of the smarter boxing Mexican public. But in America, it's different.
In a sense, that's true. That's very true. But that's because we haven't allowed. Look, in 1984 was really the last Olympics that we had a great team.
Yep.
After that, we had one or two medals, if that. Deontay was the last one to have us a bronze. And why is that? That is because we don't have an amateur program, because we don't have the kind of coaching that, and not only coaching, but support to the coaches that allows us to develop the fighters so that they're grown. We're raising a bunch of kids. Our fighters are not ready for the next level. Why they're not ready for the next level? Because we're coddling them. We're not allowing them to grow up. You mentioned that the Mexican fighters and the Mexican fans are more developed. Well, that's because they're forced to be. And when we don't force our young men, fighters, to develop and to become tougher and to become more of a man, let's just say, more of a grown-up, then it's impossible for it to translate into good fighters, good businessmen, good all the way around. When they're growing up when they're 40, and the other races or Mexicans are growing up when they're 20s or 22, then they're going to have an advantage. We have lost that edge, I think, in our youth, force them to be the grown people that they need to be successful in all endeavors. In this particular case, the boxing, like I said, we haven't had the success because we're not allowing them to grow up. We're coddling. We're giving them everything that needs to be that they need, just so that we continue to, or let's just say a manager continues to be in charge because he's feeding the fighter and he's giving them money's monthly, so the fighter doesn't grow up. The fighter's being well taken care of, so they don't grow up in a manner that the other, let's say, races do. And that's unfortunate for us as Americans, because we're allowing them to pass us in all aspects.
It's a problem in America, and you see it. It gets worse and worse with every generation, and it shows. And that's a real problem. But this interview went a lot longer than I expected, and I apologize for it. You're a great conversationalist. I just have a few more questions, and I just want to get back to the Canelo-Cotto fight. You mentioned how Canelo improved a lot since he sparred Gennady back 4 years ago. He's 25 now. He was 21 then. But a lot of people think that Miguel Cotto is also fighting at a higher level now than ever, as he hired Freddie Roach, and he credits Freddie as making him remember his past skills, and particularly his hook to the body and a lot of the little things that he lost over the years. Now, do you see that too? Do you see a big improvement in Cotto since he joined Freddie?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, Canelo, let me just say a little bit about Canelo. All those things that you said are very true. But the most important fact, I think, that we have to consider with Canelo is that he fought Floyd Mayweather. And because he lost to Floyd Mayweather, he became a better fighter. Yeah. He understands now what he needs to do to be at that elite level. Floyd made him a better fighter by beating him. Yep. Floyd made him understand what it takes to beat Floyd. So Canelo's not only improved because he's 25 years old and because Chepo and Eddie have done a great job with him, and Oscar has promoted him correctly and got him the right fights to make him grow. But I think Floyd helped that immensely. As far as Cotto, I think that the move to Freddie finally gave Cotto a guy that was going to run the show. In the past, when he was with his uncle and when he was with Pedro and he was with some of the other coaches, and the reason I say this is because he was up here in camp when he had Pedro Diaz training him. And actually, Miguel ran the show. Miguel said what he wanted to do. Miguel really ran the training. And with Freddie now, Freddie is the boss. Freddie runs the show. Freddie trains him like Freddie trains. So because of Freddie, I think that Miguel has become a better fighter and is recalling some of the things that he knew in the past, or he did in the past, that he stopped doing because there was nobody pushing him. Now you have a guy in Freddie that's trying to bring back all those things that Cotto knew but had not practiced. Mm-hmm. And adding Freddie's twist to it makes him a better fighter. It's definitely a great fight. It's a 50-50 fight for me. I just tend to lean a little bit towards the youth of Canelo, but don't go to sleep on Cotto, because not only is he a Hall of Fame fighter, he will be a Hall of Fame fighter, but he's a guy that has dramatically improved under Freddie.
And I'm sure you've been asked 500 times at least, but I think you just answered it. You're leaning towards Canelo in that fight?
I'm just leaning towards Canelo. It's a heck of a fight, but I'm leaning towards Canelo because of the youth. I think Cotto has had some very difficult fights, and I think if the fight goes long, I just see the kind of fight that he had with Margarito, where Canelo's getting stronger and maybe Miguel is fading a little bit. But I see a fantastic fight, and I wouldn't doubt if Cotto could win. But at this point, if I was a betting man, I think that the youth is what's making me lean towards Canelo.
Yeah, and Triple G moved here recently from Germany with his family. He moved to the West Coast where you are. How does he like living in the States?
He loves it. The fact is that his family is very comfortable here. He's, of course, disappointed that he's not close to his mother. His father, unfortunately, died a year and a half ago, and now his mother is by herself with Max, his brother, in Kazakhstan. But his son is having a great time here, going to school. His wife is enjoying the California lifestyle. His son plays soccer. His son plays basketball, baseball. He's taking piano lessons. So all those things are good for Gennady's psyche because they're close. Because they're right here where he can just give him a call, and he knows that at any time, at any moment, he can go down and visit him. Not that he does, but just knowing that they're that close, I think, is very good for Gennady's psyche. Gennady likes the fact that his son is learning English and is learning a different way of life than he had, let's just say, in Germany and Kazakhstan. But I think that they'll live here for as long as Gennady's a pro. And I believe they will go back to Kazakhstan when this is all over. But they're very comfortable here right now.
And what about you and his relationship? Is it getting closer now that you get to spend more time with him? He's close by.
Actually, even when his family was in Germany, I think in 2013, he spent 10 months out of 12 with me. So, no, we spend a lot of time together. It just makes it easier for me as a coach to know that his mind is at ease. His mind is at ease because they're right here. It's his only son. He's very close to him, Vadim, and he likes the fact that he can talk to him and he knows that he's real close. So for me, it makes it easier because his mind is at peace. He not that he trains any harder, but just that he's at peace with knowing that they're that close.
Yeah, and I don't know how much stock you put in the pound-for-pound race. Right now, Floyd retired or says he retired. Would you say Triple G is the best fighter on the planet right now?
I would say that there's some fights that are coming up that will determine with the fans who that pound-for-pound king is. We have the Cotto Canelo, we have Lee and Saunders, we have Vladimir fighting somebody, Chocolatito's going to fight again. So right now I think it's vacant, and if we are being considered and we are being talked about, that is a feather in our cap, but it's something that is mythical and something that everybody will have a different opinion. All we need to do is just continue to win and continue to look good and continue to please the fans and give the entertainment to the fans that they deserve. And when all is finished and all is done, it'll all come out in the wash. And if we are number one, great. If we're not, then congratulations to the one that is.
Yeah, and you mentioned Chocolatito. He fought in the last two Triple G cards. What do you think of him, seeing him live and in person? Do you see him? Do you go out there and watch him?
You know, of course I did. We had a TV in our dressing room, and we watched his fights. Unbelievable talent. My favorite fighter of all time was Alex Arguello and Aaron Pryor. Those are my two favorite fighters of all time. Unfortunately, they fight each other. But I see a lot of traits, and I see a lot of the things that Alexis used to do in Chocolatito. He does a lot of those things, and he does them very well. He's a well-balanced fighter. He does all things well. He's a good puncher. He moves well, counter punches. He stays in the pocket. So all the things that you would want to see in a great fighter, he has. So it's a pleasure watching him. Like I said, we watched him in the dressing room, and what a treat that was. And if he's considered the number one, I wouldn't have a problem with that. And I don't think Gennady would have a problem with that. Gennady just wants the fans to enjoy not only Chocolatito but him while they're here. They don't have much more to go in their career. Chocolatito's got 40-some fights, so he may not have that many fights left. But to just enjoy him because these kind of fighters don't come along very often.
Yeah, and honestly, and Max Kellerman mentioned it on the Willie Monroe undercard. He said that Roman Gonzalez out GGG'd Triple G. But in this card, on this past Saturday night, I think GGG performed a little bit better.
Well, I think that there's different trains of thought. Everybody's got an opinion. But the bottom line is, if these guys keep fighting the challenges that they both want, I think that at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter as long as they both think they're number one and they both continue to progress. But then you have Kovalev, too. Kovalev is a heck of a fighter. So there's a lot of guys up there that could be in that mythical pound-for-pound number one spot. But again, it doesn't really matter to Gennady. It doesn't matter to me. What matters is that we keep entertaining the fans as we've been doing and keep getting them knockouts.
Yeah, and I have no problem with them always fighting on the same card. They'll be the next dynamic duo, Batman and Robin.
No.
Batman or Superman.
Are you kidding me?
It's amazing.
Me as a fight fan, if I'm going to buy that fight, I'm guaranteed two great fights.
Yep.
No matter who they fight, I'm guaranteed two great performances. Even if there's 4 fights on a pay-per-view, I know that 2 of them are going to be barn burners.
Yep.
So whether they go 1 round or 12 rounds, they're going to be exciting. So as a fight fan, they continue to fight on the same card. I'm thrilled. I'm buying.
Me too. I love it, and I love them both. And one more thing before we close shop here. I go on social media every day, Abel, and one of the hot threads on one of the boxing groups on Facebook that I go on, it's a mythical matchup between Triple G and Marvin Hagler. And you mentioned Marvin Hagler earlier in the call. Let's say it was last Saturday night's Triple G fighting the 1984 version of Marvin Hagler. Or maybe the one that fought Hearns in 85. How does that fight play out in your mind? How do you think that one goes?
I think that Marvin Hagler was a great fighter, as was Terry Norris in his heyday. But these are guys, and we, unfortunately, we as fans like to compare eras. And in this era, fighters are different. Fighters are more physical. Fighters are better conditioned. Fighters are stronger. Fighters are fighting a different fight today than they were fighting back 20 years ago or 25 years ago. I believe that, and I said this in the past, and Ron Borges really got upset at me because he's a Brockton man, but I feel that Gennady Golovkin would have beat Marvin Hagler in the later part of the fight, would have knocked him out later or stopped him in the later part of the fight. Why? Because if you look at Marvin was a junior middleweight welterweight size-wise. He was like 5'7", 5'7.5". You have Golovkin, who is a big physical middleweight that would have been too strong. I think that a guy like Thomas Hearns may have had a better chance because he was taller and could have boxed him. Golovkin would have finally got to him. But I think that these eras are not comparable because it's a different type of fight. It's a different type of fight that Vladimir Klitschko has and Larry Holmes had. It's just different. James Toney, when he was a middleweight, was totally different than Golovkin fights today. Bernard Hopkins, when he was a middleweight, was totally different than Golovkin fights today. So I find it hard to compare those eras. But I respect Marvin because he was a great champion. But it also was a champion that had a defense against a lightweight champion, Roberto Duran, who moved up 4 divisions. 2 divisions first to beat Ray Leonard, and then 2 divisions to fight Marvin Hagler, and Roberto Duran lost a 2-point decision in a 15-round fight. So, which way do you lean? Was Marvin Hagler not quite what Golovkin is, or was Roberto Duran that badass that at 160 pounds was able to lose a 2-point decision to the best middleweight in the world at the time? Mm-hmm. So, it's difficult to compare. Again, I say that because I think it's not fair to the guys that were fighting then to compare them to the guys that are fighting today.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, that was the last question, but you mentioned Terry Norris earlier in the conversation, and I think about Terry a lot, and I saw pictures of him recently on Facebook. He looks great. He still looks in great shape. He still looks the same. Do you ever talk to him anymore?
He came up to visit me about a year ago, and he was doing a lot better than he was in the past. Unfortunately for Terry, after I left, after the Melzer Taylor fight, or actually after the Simon Brown fight that got called off, after Melzer Taylor, Terry started running his own show in the gym and was doing things in the gym that were not good for him. He was sparring too many rounds. He was just getting hit too much, and he's in the condition that he is now. I think because of not so much the fights, but because of all the hard physical work in the gym and the sparring. And but I saw him about a year ago, and I thought he looked great. I thought physically he looks unbelievably fit. mentally he's not completely there. I think he understands everything, but he's still the punches have taken their toll, but he's got a great wife, and Tanya, that's done wonders with him in the last 4 or 5 years. Has got him speech therapy, has got him doing boxercise, she's got him doing all kinds of different things that are good for Terry's physique and mental aptitude. But I'm happy that he's doing well, and like I said, I saw him a year ago, and he was happy to see me. Came up to my gym and saw the museum I have of his fights and his posters and his pictures, because he's one of the reasons why I am here today and successful today.
Wow, that's great. I'm glad I didn't know if I was going to ask that question, because this did go way longer than I expected, but I'm glad I did, because I think about Terry a lot, and he means a lot to me, having come up in that time where he was a really active champion and always fought great and never disappointed, and always excited the people watching. One of my favorite fighters of all time, and I do appreciate this conversation. The great Abel Sanchez. I talked to you quite a few times, Abel, and you never disappoint. You never let me down. You always have a great boxing conversation, and I appreciate this one. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for having me, and I appreciate your time. And thanks for all the support, and hopefully your fans will continue to enjoy Triple G and his ascent to greatness. But most of all, like I said, thank you for your efforts. But I can't forget to remind your listeners to make sure that when they hit their knees tonight, please say a prayer for Pritchard Cologne, because he's in dire straits.
Absolutely, and I hope the same. I appreciate your time, Abel. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great night.
You too, my friend.